who am I practicing for? I mean, John posed the question before we even started. Who am I? And really, according to what answer you come back with on that, that'll determine a lot of what you're doing in terms of your spiritual practice, in terms of your personal relationships, in terms of your social interactions. Who am I? You know, am I the lone wolf? The guy out here who's just trying to make it against all odds, against everybody else? Is this a world of scarcity? You know, where I just have to get mine, because otherwise it's going to be taken. If that's the answer you come back with, you behave in a certain way. Until you find, and I don't even fault that, because eventually you find whether it works or not. And then you switch gears. There's a street in Chicago, used to be, it's gone now. But in Chicago, I haven't seen it here. When we were driving up the roads, I saw a lot of churches. But a lot of the churches I saw were like mega churches here. You guys do church well in New Zealand. There's a little street, it's about a 4 or 5 block area that used to be in Chicago, where they had what they call storefront churches. So what it is just these little congregations where, there was a former business there that went out of business. And so, they can't find anybody to rent it to, so they rent it to this church. And so on a given Sunday, you could go and there'd be like one church here, and then a grocery store, another church, a liquor store, another church. And you could walk down this road. And as you walk, there'd be one little group of 15 people in there hitting a tambourine and praising the Lord. You walk to the next one, and they'd be in there, and the preacher would be probably exhorting them to tithe, which was what a lot of them were. But then exhorting them about the Bible, and then you go to the next. All these little congregations. And my particular thought about it has always been, this is wonderful. Because basically, every one of those churches is completely right for the people that are in there at that time. At a certain point, it will cease to be right. And then they can either move to the one next to the liquor store, or one down the block, or maybe a Theosophical Society might eventually have some level of meaning. So all of these things, in everything that I'm going to be saying, and I should say anything that you hear from anybody, weigh it out and see what it does for you. And the parts that work, magnify it. The parts that don't, wait on it or just throw it away until you need to hear it again. So anyway, practice. So when we talk about practice, there's a lot of different ways that we could go about this. Probably it's good to start with first things first. And since we're talking essentials and elements, probably the thing that is most important and often most overlooked in terms of the various sorts of descriptions you may get. There's a phrase that is, motive is everything. Motive is everything. And I want you to remember that. If you don't remember anything else from what we have going on this evening, remember that. Motive is everything. And what does that mean? Our intention, although the road to hell is said to be paved with good intentions, the fact is that our motivation is what colors our every activity. So much so that you can have two people doing the exact same thing, and yet it can be of a completely different quality. I mean, there are people who give to the poor to be certain that their name goes on the building where these poor will be coming, and they'll be remembered for generations to come. It doesn't it doesn't make the ability to feed the people any less. I mean, obviously the food given by someone whose motive is to be honored and to be recognized, I mean, your appetite goes away just the same. as the one who's giving it because this is something that they feel they're doing because this is a fellow human being, this is a brother, a sister, that I feel I'm intimately connected with, and so I'm here feeding them. Exact same action, same loaf of bread, but a very, very different quality. So motive is everything. And just to give an example, in Mahayana Buddhism, the same idea is there. That your motivation is the first thing that you check in on when you say you're going to be practicing anything. And what the motivation is in Mahayana Buddhism, what you're encouraged to try to embrace, is the idea that when I sit to meditate, or when I go out to serve, or any of the things that I do, why am I doing it? And so for the ordinary Mahayana Buddhist, it would be, I'm doing this so that I can gain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Very often, I think, people of a genuinely spiritual frame of mind will focus on benefit to others, to all sentient beings, and sometimes make the critical mistake of forgetting that I too am a sentient being. It's not just about exhausting yourself in service to the world, because you're a part of that world. So don't forget to include yourself in that. Just don't make yourself the only focus, as it's often the case. So that's sort of an example of motivation.